So I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. When I was 40, I wasn't thinking about retirement either. I was thinking about patterns. Specifically, the pattern of people who wake up at 65 and realize they've made a series of small, perfectly logical decisions that somehow added up to one enormous mistake. Now, here's the interesting part, and I promise this gets better. The math of retirement isn't actually that complicated. What is complicated is human behavior. We're incredibly good at solving differential equations, landing rockets on moving platforms, and teaching computers to recognize faces. But somehow, we're terrible at doing simple things consistently over time. The good news? If you're 40 with nothing saved, you're not behind. You're just starting from a different initial condition. And in mathematics, we love initial condition problems because once you know where you are, you can calculate exactly where you need to go. Let me show you the 10 moves that actually work, not the ones that feel good, not the ones everyone talks about at parties, but the ones the data supports. And fair warning, number 7 is going to make you uncomfortable. But that's usually how you know it's the right answer. Let me tell you about the single most powerful financial decision I've ever seen people make, and it has nothing to do with picking the right stocks or timing the market. It's embarrassingly simple, almost boring, but the mathematics behind it are absolutely beautiful. When you manually decide to save money each month, you're introducing human psychology into what should be a purely mechanical process. And human psychology, frankly, is a terrible portfolio manager. We have bad days. We see things we want. We convince ourselves that this month is different, that we'll save extra next month to make up for it. Except next month, we tell ourselves the same story. This isn't a character flaw. It's just how our brains are wired. We're pattern recognition machines that consistently fool ourselves. Here's what I want you to do instead, and I want you to do it this week, not next month. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your retirement account that happens the day after your paycheck hits. Not 3 days after. Not when you remember. The day after. This is what mathematicians call removing a variable from the equation. You're taking your inconsistent, emotional, easily distracted self out of the decision-making process entirely. The amount doesn't even matter as much as you think right now. If you can only start with $50, start with $50. The behavior is what we're building here. Once that transfer becomes invisible, once you forget it's even happening, that's when you increase it. Add another $50, then another. Your lifestyle will adjust around what's left, not around what arrives. This is the critical insight most people miss. We don't spend based on what we need. We spend based on what we see available. I've watched people transform their financial lives with this one change, and it's not because they suddenly became more disciplined or developed superhuman willpower. It's because they stopped relying on willpower altogether. Willpower is a limited resource. It depletes throughout the day. By evening, when you're tired and that online shopping cart is looking attractive, your willpower is gone. But an automatic transfer, it doesn't get tired. It doesn't negotiate with itself. It just executes. There's another mathematical beauty to this approach. Compound interest works best with consistency, not with large, occasional contributions. The person who automatically saves $200 every single month for 25 years will dramatically outperform the person who plans to save large amounts but does so sporadically. Time in the market beats timing the market, as they say, but more importantly, consistency in contributions beats sporadic enthusiasm. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What if there's an emergency? What if I need that money? Fair question. This is why you maintain a small emergency fund in a separate, accessible account, maybe $1,000 to $2,000 to start. But here's the thing about emergencies, they're far less common than we pretend they are. Most of what we call emergencies are actually just expenses we didn't plan for. Real emergencies, medical crises, job loss, true catastrophes, those are what emergency funds are for. That new television on sale is not an emergency. Set it up this week. Automate it. Make it invisible. Let the system work while you focus on living your life. Because the secret to saving money isn't wanting it badly enough. It's making it so you don't have to want it at all. When I look at retirement savings, I see a pattern that's almost mathematical in its consistency. The people who succeed aren't necessarily the ones making the most money. They're the ones who treat savings as a fixed cost, like rent or a mortgage payment, rather than as whatever's left over at the end of the month. And the magic number, according to decades of data and retirement research, sits right around 15% of your gross income. Now, if you're 40 and starting from zero, 15% might sound impossible. You might be thinking about your mortgage, your car payment, your kids' activities, and wondering where on earth you're supposed to find an extra 15%. I understand that reaction. But here's what I want you to consider. You're not finding the money. You're deciding the money exists before you spend it on everything else. There's a profound difference between those two approaches. Let's talk about what 15% actually means in practical terms. If you're earning $60,000 a year, we're talking about $9,000 annually or $750 per month. If you're earning $80,000, it's $12,000 annually or $1,000 per month. These aren't small numbers, I'll grant you that, but they're also not as insurmountable as they appear when you break them down and approach them systematically. Here's my recommendation, and this is where the gradual increase strategy becomes crucial. If you absolutely cannot start at 15% today, start at 6% or 8%, whatever you can manage without creating genuine financial distress. But, and this is the critical part, commit right now to increasing that percentage by 1% every single year. Set a calendar reminder. Make it automatic. 1% of your income is barely noticeable when it disappears gradually, but over a decade, you've added 10 percentage points to your savings rate. The mathematics of this approach are elegant. Let's say you start at 6% when you're 40. By the time you're 49, you're saving 15%. By the time you're 55, you're saving 21%. The compound growth on those later contributions, combined with the growth on your earlier contributions, creates an acceleration effect that's quite remarkable. You're not just saving more money, you're giving that money more time to multiply. There's also a psychological component here that the data strongly supports. When you get a raise, you never see that extra money in your checking account if you've already committed to increasing your savings rate. You can't miss what you never had. This is how people making $50,000 live paycheck to paycheck and people making $200,000 also live paycheck to paycheck. Lifestyle inflation is real, it's powerful, and it's completely avoidable if you intercept the money before it reaches your discretionary spending. I want to be clear about something. 15% is the baseline for someone starting at 40 with nothing saved. It's not the ceiling. If you can do 20%, do 20%. If a bonus comes your way, if you pay off a car loan, if any financial breathing room appears in your life, increase that percentage. The goal here isn't to scrape by in retirement, it's to actually retire comfortably with dignity and options. Run the numbers for yourself. Calculate what 15% means in your specific situation. Then build the plan to get there, even if it takes you 5 years to reach that target. The important thing is starting the climb today, because every month you wait is a month that money isn't working for you. There's a mathematical truth about debt that most people understand intellectually but fail to act on emotionally, and it costs them tens of thousands of dollars over their lifetime. When you're carrying credit card debt at 18 or 22% interest while simultaneously trying to build retirement savings, you're essentially trying to swim upstream in a river that's moving faster than you can paddle. The math doesn't work. It can't work. And pretending otherwise is just expensive self-deception. Let me show you why this matters so dramatically. If you have $10,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest and you're making minimum payments, you're paying roughly $2,000 per year just in interest. That's not reducing your debt, that's just the cost of having the debt. Meanwhile, if you're investing money in the stock market, hoping for average returns of 8 to 10% annually, you're losing money on the spread. You're paying 20% to borrow while earning 8% on investments. No professional investor would make that trade, and neither should you. Here's the priority sequence, and I want you to think of this as mathematically rigid, not as a suggestion. First, you contribute enough to your employer retirement plan to capture the full company match. That's free money, and we'll talk about that next. But after that, every available dollar goes to eliminating high interest debt. Not some of your available dollars, not half. Every single one. Credit cards first, because they typically carry the highest rates. Then personal loans. Then car loans if the interest rate is above 6 or 7%. I know this feels counterintuitive. You're 40, you have nothing saved, and I'm telling you to delay retirement contributions to pay off debt. But consider what happens when that credit card debt is gone. Suddenly, that $2,000 a year in interest payments doesn't evaporate anymore. It becomes $2,000 you can redirect into retirement savings. You've effectively given yourself a raise by eliminating a recurring cost. That's the power of attacking debt with intensity rather than casually chipping away at it over decades. There's also a psychological component here that shouldn't be underestimated. Debt creates stress. It creates mental overhead. Every month, you're managing multiple payments, worrying about balances, calculating whether you can afford something. When you eliminate that debt, you eliminate that cognitive load. You free up mental energy that can be directed toward building wealth rather than managing obligations. This isn't touchy-feely nonsense. This is recognizing that financial decisions require mental clarity, and debt clouds that clarity. Now, I'm not suggesting you stop all retirement contributions if you have debt. The employer match is still sacred. We never leave free money on the table. And if you have low interest debt, say a mortgage at 4% or a car loan at 3%, you don't need to attack those with the same urgency. The math actually supports making minimum payments on low interest debt while investing the difference. But high interest consumer debt, that's a financial emergency that deserves emergency level response. Here's what this looks like practically. Create a debt avalanche plan. List your debts by interest rate, highest to lowest. Make minimum payments on everything except the highest rate debt, and then throw every extra dollar at that top debt until it's eliminated. Then move to the next one. This isn't the only method. Some people prefer the debt snowball, paying off smallest balances first for psychological wins, but the avalanche method is mathematically optimal. The goal is simple: become debt-free as quickly as possible so that every dollar you earn can work for your future instead of paying for your past. I need to tell you about what is perhaps the closest thing to actual free money that exists in personal finance, and yet I'm constantly amazed by how many people walk away from it every single year. If your employer offers to match your retirement contributions and you're not taking full advantage of that match, you are quite literally refusing a portion of your compensation. It's as if your boss handed you a check and you said, "No, thank you. I'd rather not have this money." The mathematics of this are so straightforward that it borders on absurd. Let's talk about how employer matches typically work, because understanding the mechanics helps you see why this is so critical. A common structure is something like this. Your employer will match 50 cents for every dollar you contribute, up to 6% of your salary. So if you're earning $70,000 and you contribute 6%, that's $4,200. Your employer adds another $2,100. That's a $2,100 raise you're giving yourself simply by participating in the plan. That's an immediate 50% return on your money before any market growth even happens. Some employers are even more generous. I've seen matches that are dollar for dollar up to 4 or 5%. I've seen matches with multiple tiers. The specific structure doesn't matter as much as this fundamental principle. Whatever the maximum match is, you need to be getting it. This takes priority over almost everything else in your financial life except keeping a roof over your head and food on your table. It even takes priority over paying down debt in most cases because the immediate return is so substantial. Here's where people make mistakes. They think, well, I can't afford to save 15% right now, so I'll just save 3%. But if the employer match maxes out at 6% of contributions, they're leaving half the match on the table. The optimal move, even if you're stretched thin, is to contribute enough to get the full match first, then work on other financial priorities, then increase retirement contributions beyond the match when you can afford it. The match is the foundation. Everything else builds on top of it. I want to address a common concern I hear, but that money is locked away until retirement. What if I need it? First, many plans allow for loans or hardship withdrawals under specific circumstances, though I don't recommend relying on this. Second, and more importantly, you're thinking about this backwards. The question isn't whether you might need this money before retirement. The question is whether you'll need money during retirement, and the answer is absolutely yes. By not capturing the employer match today, you're making your future self significantly poorer to keep your present self marginally more liquid. That's a bad trade. There's also the time component to consider. When you're 40 and starting from nothing, every dollar you save is roughly 5 years to grow before you reach traditional retirement age. With average market returns, money doubles approximately every 7 to 10 years. A dollar saved today could be worth $8 or even $16 by the time you retire, depending on returns and timeline. But the employer match isn't just $1, it's $1 plus 50 cents, or $1 plus another dollar right from day one. You're starting ahead. Check your employee benefits portal today. Find out what your employer match structure is, calculate the exact contribution percentage you need to hit to maximize that match. Then set your contribution to that level immediately. This isn't optional. This isn't something to consider when your finances are more stable. This is the bedrock of your retirement strategy. And every month you delay is money you'll never get back. There's a specific tax advantage available to people starting retirement savings later in life that's so powerful, so mathematically elegant, that I consider it one of the few genuine gifts in the tax code. And yet most people either don't know about it or don't understand why it matters so profoundly. I'm talking about the Roth IRA, and specifically how it becomes uniquely valuable when you're playing catch up in your 40s. Let me explain the fundamental difference between traditional retirement accounts and Roth accounts, because this is where the magic happens. With a traditional IRA or 401k, you get a tax deduction today. You contribute pre-tax dollars, reduce your current tax bill, and pay taxes later when you withdraw the money in retirement. With a Roth IRA, you pay taxes on the money now, but then it grows completely tax-free, and you never pay taxes on it again. Not on the growth, not on the withdrawals, not ever. For someone at 40 with nothing saved, this creates an interesting strategic opportunity. Here's why the Roth becomes particularly attractive in your situation. You're going to be making catch-up contributions for the next 25 years. If you do this right, those contributions are going to grow substantially. Let's say you manage to build a $400,000 Roth IRA by the time you're 65. With a traditional IRA, you'd owe taxes on every dollar you withdraw, potentially $100,000 or more over your retirement, depending on tax rates. With a Roth, that $400,000 is yours, completely tax-free. You've essentially prepaid the taxes at today's rates and locked in tax-free growth forever. There's another advantage that becomes crucial after age 50. The government allows what they call catch-up contributions for people over 50, recognizing that many Americans start saving late. For 2024 and beyond, you can contribute an extra $1,000 per year to your Roth IRA on top of the standard limit. This might not sound like much, but over 15 years from age 50 to 65, that's an additional $15,000 in contributions, which could grow to $30,000 or more by retirement, all tax-free. Now, I need to address the income limits because Roth IRAs do have restrictions. If you earn too much, you can't contribute directly. But there's a perfectly legal strategy called a backdoor Roth conversion that allows high earners to get money into a Roth IRA anyway. I won't go into the mechanics here, but know that this option exists if you find yourself above the income thresholds. Here's how I think about the strategic choice between Roth and traditional contributions. If you believe tax rates will be higher in the future, either because of government policy changes or because your retirement income will be higher than expected. The Roth is superior. You're paying taxes at today's rates instead of tomorrow's potentially higher rates. If you're currently in a high tax bracket and expect to be in a lower bracket in retirement, traditional contributions make more sense. But for most people at 40 who are behind on savings, the Roth offers more flexibility and certainty. There's also something psychologically powerful about seeing your Roth balance and knowing that number is actually yours. It's not your balance minus future taxes. It's just your balance. When you're planning retirement, that certainty is valuable. You know exactly how much purchasing power you have. The annual contribution limits for Roth IRAs are relatively modest, currently $7,000 per year, or $8,000 if you're over 50. But if you max this out every year from 40 to 65, even with modest returns, you're looking at well over $300,000 in tax-free money. Combined with your employer retirement plan, this becomes a significant portion of your retirement security. Open a Roth IRA this month if you haven't already. Set up automatic contributions. Let it grow tax-free for the next quarter century. I spent years studying patterns in financial markets, looking for edges, trying to find ways to beat the averages. And here's what decades of data tell us with absolute clarity: the vast majority of professional money managers, people who do this for a living with teams of analysts and sophisticated models, cannot consistently beat a simple index fund. If the professionals can't do it, what makes you think you can? More importantly, why would you even try when there's a mathematically superior alternative sitting right in front of you? Index funds are beautifully simple instruments. They track a market index, the S&P 500, for example, by holding all the stocks in that index in proportion to their weight. There's no stock picking, no market timing, no guru making predictions about which sectors will outperform next quarter. It's pure exposure to the market's returns, minus a tiny management fee. And that fee structure is where the first layer of mathematical advantage appears. A typical actively managed mutual fund charges around 1% annually in fees. A good index fund charges maybe 0 over 3%. Over 30 years, that difference in fees alone can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost compound growth. But the fee advantage is just the beginning. The real power of index funds shows up when you remove human emotion from investment decisions. When you pick individual stocks, you're constantly making choices. Should I sell this one? Should I buy more of that one? What about this hot stock everyone's talking about? Each of these decisions is an opportunity for your psychology to sabotage your returns. You sell when you get scared. You buy when you get excited. You chase performance. You panic during downturns. This isn't a character flaw, it's human nature. But human nature is terrible at investing. With an index fund, you make one decision, buy and hold. The market goes up, you own it. The market goes down, you still own it. You're not tempted to sell your winners too early or hold your losers too long because you don't have individual winners and losers, you have the entire market. This removes what behavioral economists call decision fatigue. You're not spending mental energy trying to outsmart millions of other investors. You're simply accepting market returns, which historically have been quite good. Let me show you what this looks like practically. The S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% annually over the past several decades. Not every year, obviously. Some years it's up 30%. Some years it's down 20%, but the long-term average is remarkably consistent. If you're investing for 25 years, you're not trying to predict what happens next quarter. You're betting on the long-term growth of American business, which has been one of the safest bets in financial history. You're diversified across 500 companies, across every major sector of the economy. When one company fails, it's a fraction of a percent of your portfolio. When another company thrives, you capture that growth. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You've heard stories about people who made fortunes picking the right stock at the right time. Those stories are true. They're also statistically irrelevant. For every person who bought Amazon at $10, there are thousands who bought Enron or Pets.com or any of the countless companies that seemed promising and then vanished. You don't hear those stories because failure doesn't make for exciting dinner conversation. But the failures vastly outnumber the successes. Here's my recommendation. Pick a low-cost total market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund. Set up automatic contributions. Never look at individual stock prices again. Ignore financial news. Ignore hot tips. Ignore the urge to get clever. Just let the market do what it's done for over a century. Grow steadily over time. This strategy won't make you feel smart or give you exciting stories to tell, but it will make you richer than almost any alternative you could choose. This is the recommendation that makes people uncomfortable, and I understand why. I'm about to suggest something that feels like moving backwards, like admitting defeat, like sacrificing the life you've built. But here's the mathematical reality. If you're 40 with nothing saved for retirement, your current lifestyle is not sustainable. It simply isn't. The numbers don't work. And the sooner you accept that and make adjustments, the less painful your future becomes. What I'm proposing is a controlled reduction in lifestyle now versus a catastrophic reduction in lifestyle at 65. Let me be specific about what I mean. I want you to calculate your current monthly take, home pay, and then I want you to live as if you make 20% less than that amount. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, every single month. If you bring home $5,000, live on $4,000. If you bring home $8,000, live on $6,400. That difference, that 20%, goes directly into retirement savings before you have a chance to spend it on anything else. Now, I can already hear the objections. I can barely make ends meet now. How am I supposed to cut 20%? Here's what I've observed over years of watching people do this. Your lifestyle expands to consume whatever resources are available. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it happens so gradually you don't even notice it. You get a raise, and suddenly you're eating out more often. You get a bonus, and suddenly you need a nicer car. Your income grows, but somehow you never have more left over at the end of the month because your spending grew right alongside it. What I'm asking you to do is reverse that process intentionally. And yes, it requires actual sacrifice. You might need to drive your current car for 5 more years instead of 2. You might need to take less expensive vacations or skip them entirely for a few years. You might need to eat at home instead of restaurants. You might need to cancel subscriptions you don't really use. These aren't abstractions. These are real changes that will feel uncomfortable. But here's the question you need to answer honestly. Would you rather be uncomfortable now while you still have income and options, or would you rather be desperate at 70 with no income and no options? The mathematics here I'm forgiving. If you continue your current spending pattern and try to save whatever's left over, you already know what happens. Nothing is ever left over. There's always something, always a reason, always next month. But if you remove 20% from the equation entirely, if you never see that money in your checking account, your spending will adjust. It has to. You'll find the cuts. You'll discover which expenses were actually important and which were just habitual. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about living in deprivation or never enjoying anything. This is about making a conscious trade between present consumption and future security. Every dollar you spend today on things that don't truly matter is a dollar you won't have when you need it most. And retirement isn't some distant abstraction. It's 25 years away. That's closer than you think. The children you're supporting now will have their own lives. The career you're building will end. The body that feels invincible now will need more care. These are certainties, not possibilities. Here's what makes this bearable. The adjustment happens faster than you expect. The first month feels impossible. The second month feels hard. By the 6th month, you've forgotten what you used to spend that money on. Your new baseline becomes normal. And then something remarkable happens. You start to feel proud of yourself. You start to feel in control. Because for the first time in years, you're not spending money you don't have on things you don't need. You're building something real. Downsize now. Make the sacrifice while it's still a choice, because waiting only makes it worse. When you're 40 and behind on retirement savings, time becomes your scarcest resource. You have roughly 25 years until traditional retirement age, And while that sounds like a lot, it's significantly less runway than someone who started at 25. This is where a second income stream becomes not just helpful, but potentially transformative. I'm not talking about getting rich with a side hustle. I'm talking about creating an additional revenue source that exists for one purpose only, to be converted immediately and entirely into retirement savings. Here's why this strategy is so powerful mathematically. Your primary income is already allocated. It covers your housing, your food, your transportation, your existing obligations. You've hopefully already implemented the 20% reduction in lifestyle and increased your savings rate from your main job. But that second income, that starts at zero and goes directly to your future. There's no lifestyle creep to fight, no existing expenses to justify. It's pure additive retirement contribution from day one. Let me show you what this looks like in practical terms. Suppose you find a way to generate an extra $1,000 per month. That's $12,000 per year, going straight into your retirement accounts. Over 25 years, even without any market returns, which is an absurdly conservative assumption, that's $300,000. With reasonable market returns of 7 to 8% annually, you're looking at more than $800,000 by retirement from side income alone. This is the mathematical power of a dedicated secondary revenue stream that never touches your regular spending. Now, what kind of side income am I talking about? This depends entirely on your skills, your available time, and your risk tolerance. Some people consult in their professional field on evenings or weekends. Some people teach or tutor. Some people drive for ride-sharing services or deliver food. Some people rent out a room in their house or a parking space. Some people freelance as writers, designers, or programmers. Some people will buy and resell items online. The specific vehicle doesn't matter nearly as much as the commitment to treat this income differently than your primary income. This is where most people fail with side income. They earn an extra $500 and they think, great, now I can afford the thing I've been wanting. Wrong? Completely wrong. That $500 goes into your Roth IRA or your 401k before you even think about spending it. You need to create a psychological and practical firewall between side income and discretionary spending. The easiest way to do this is to have the side income deposited directly into a separate account that automatically transfers to your retirement accounts. You never see it as spendable money. It was never part of your lifestyle budget. I want to address the time concern because I know what you're thinking. You're already working full-time, maybe you have family obligations, and the idea of taking on additional work sounds exhausting. I understand. But here's the reality. We're talking about 5 to 10 hours per week, maybe 15 if you're particularly ambitious. That's 1 to 2 hours per weekday evening or a few hours on the weekend. Most people spend more time than that watching television or scrolling social media. I'm not judging those activities. Rest and recreation matter. But if you're genuinely concerned about retirement security, you need to make hard choices about how you allocate your time. There's also a terminal date to consider. You don't have to do this forever. You need to do this for the next 10 to 15 years while you build your retirement foundation. Once you're 55 with a solid retirement account balance and maximized savings from your primary income, you can consider scaling back the side income. But right now, at 40 with nothing saved, this is crisis mode. Crisis mode requires crisis-level effort. Find something you can do. Start this month. Direct 100% of that income to retirement. Watch what happens over 5 years. You'll surprise yourself. There's a decision you're going to face sometime in your 60s that will have more impact on your retirement security than almost any investment choice you make between now and then. And most people, when they reach that decision point, make the wrong choice because they're thinking emotionally rather than mathematically. I'm talking about when to claim Social Security benefits, and the optimal strategy for most people is brutally simple: wait until age 70. Let me show you the mathematics, because this is one of those rare situations where the numbers are so clear that there's really no debate. You become eligible for Social Security at age 62. If you claim at 62, you receive a permanently reduced benefit, roughly 30% less than if you waited until your full retirement age, which is around 67 for most people reading this. But here's where it gets interesting. For every year you delay claiming benefits beyond your full retirement age up to age 70, your benefit increases by about 8%. That's not 8% one time. That's an 8% permanent increase to every monthly check you'll receive for the rest of your life. Let's make this concrete. Suppose your full retirement age benefit would be $2,000 per month. If you claim at 62, you're looking at roughly $1,400 per month. If you wait until 70, you're looking at about $500 per month. That's an $1,100 per month difference, over $13,000 per year, every year for the rest of your life. And Social Security benefits have cost of living adjustments, so that percentage difference compounds over time. Now I can hear the objection already, but if I claim at 62, I get 8 more years of payments. Doesn't that make up for the smaller amount? This is the break-even analysis people always do, and they usually get it wrong. Yes, there's a break-even age somewhere around your early 80s where the total dollars received catch up, but here's what that analysis ignores: longevity risk. If you live to 85 or 90 or 95, which is increasingly common with modern health care, those extra years of higher payments become enormously valuable. You're essentially buying longevity insurance by delaying benefits. There's another factor that doesn't show up in simple break, even calculations: purchasing power in your later years. At 85, you're much more likely to face expensive healthcare costs, potential long-term care needs, and reduced ability to supplement income with work. Having a higher guaranteed monthly payment at that age is worth more than having a smaller payment at 62 when you're still relatively young and potentially still able to work part-time if needed. This strategy requires something that's admittedly difficult. It requires you to fund your life from age 65 or 67 until age 70 without Social Security income. For someone who's starting at 40 with nothing saved, this means your retirement savings need to bridge that gap. This is another reason why aggressive saving now is so critical. You're not just saving to live on from 65 forward. You're saving to give yourself the option to delay Social Security and maximize that lifetime benefit. I want to acknowledge that this strategy isn't universal. If you have serious health issues and don't expect to live past your late 70s, claiming earlier makes sense. If you absolutely cannot fund your retirement without Social Security income starting at 62, then you claim at 62. If you're in a situation where spousal benefits or survivor benefits complicate the calculation, you might optimize differently. These are exceptions, not the rule. But for a healthy 40-year-old with average life expectancy, the strategy is clear. Build your retirement savings with the explicit goal of being able to delay Social Security until 70. That decision alone could add hundreds of thousands of dollars to your lifetime retirement income. It's one of the most powerful levers you have, and it costs nothing except patience and planning. Factor this into your savings goals now. Build the bridge that lets you wait. Your 85-year-old self will thank you. There's a fundamental difference between people who successfully transform their financial lives and people who stay stuck in the same patterns year after year, and it has nothing to do with intelligence or willpower or even income level. The difference is measurement. Successful people track their progress with the same rigor a scientist brings to a laboratory experiment. They know their numbers. They watch the trends. They adjust based on data, not based on feelings or vague impressions about how things are going. When I say run the numbers monthly, I mean literally sit down once a month, same day every month, put it on your calendar, and examine your complete financial picture. What's your total retirement account balance? How much did you contribute this month? What was the market return? What's your net worth? How much debt remains? Are you on track with your savings rate? These aren't rhetorical questions. These are actual data points you need to know with precision. Here's why monthly tracking matters so much more than quarterly or annual reviews. Monthly tracking catches problems while they're still small. You overspent in restaurants this month. You see it immediately and correct course next month. Your automatic contributions didn't go through due to a bank error. You catch it within weeks, not months. Your investment allocation drifted because one sector outperformed. You rebalance before it becomes a significant issue. Monthly tracking creates a feedback loop that keeps you honest and keeps you moving in the right direction. The psychology of this is fascinating. When you review your numbers monthly, you begin to internalize them. You start to know roughly what your retirement balance should be before you even log in. You develop an intuitive sense for whether you're progressing or stalling. This awareness changes your behavior in subtle but powerful ways. You think twice before making a large, unnecessary purchase because you know you'll see its impact when you run your numbers in 2 weeks. You feel motivated when you see your balance growing because progress becomes tangible rather than abstract. Let me tell you what this tracking session should look like practically. Set aside 30 to 45 minutes. Open a spreadsheet. It doesn't need to be fancy, just functional. Create columns for the date, your retirement account balances, your debt balances, your monthly contributions, and your net worth. Each month, add a new row with current numbers. Over time, you'll see trends emerge. You'll see the exponential curve of compound growth starting to appear. You'll see debt balances shrinking. You'll see net worth climbing. These visual representations of progress are incredibly motivating. But tracking isn't just about feeling good when things go well. It's about identifying problems when things go poorly. Maybe you notice your savings rate dropped because you had unexpected expenses 3 months in a row. That's not random bad luck. That's a pattern that needs investigation. Maybe your budget isn't realistic. Maybe you need a larger emergency fund. Maybe you're not being honest with yourself about discretionary spending. The numbers reveal truth that your emotions want to hide. There's also an accountability component here. When you know you're going to review your financial progress on the first of every month, you're less likely to make impulsive financial decisions on the 25th. It's like weighing yourself daily when you're trying to lose weight. The awareness itself becomes a behavioral intervention. You can't hide from monthly tracking. You can't pretend things are fine when the numbers show they're not. I want to emphasize something important. This monthly review should be judgment-free. You're not beating yourself up for bad months or congratulating yourself excessively for good months. You're simply collecting data and responding to that data rationally. Scientists don't get emotional when an experiment produces unexpected results. They adjust their hypothesis and try again. Treat your finances the same way. Create the spreadsheet tonight. Set the monthly calendar reminder. Run your first monthly report this week. Then do it again next month. And the month after that, for 25 years. Because retirement security isn't built through one brilliant decision. It's built through consistent, measured progress tracked relentlessly over time.